Stevie Knight is a dumbass. Okay, so if y'all hadn't been checking out the YouTube and the recent events, or if you don't know anything about Urban Preach or Night Talk ran by Stevie Knight. I don't know what else to say about him. I can't stand him. I used to follow his content, but then it got to the point where I just realized that he doesn't really have like legitimate talking points. But yeah, but I remember at one point I was so upset about his talking point on the Marvels movie that came out. Was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. I think it was last year. I was already looking forward to the Marvels, mainly because of the fact that the actress who played Kamala Khan, I was looking forward to seeing her in a movie setting, seeing how her character and her acting translates to the movie setting of the MCU. Not to mention the fact that I'm a big fan of Iman Falani, like not in a weird way, but like more like the fact that I feel like she really is legitimately the real life Kamala Khan or Kamala Khan. In the fact that she knows everything about Marvel. She even tried to correct Kevin Feige on the designation of Earth of the MCU, Earth universe. Yeah, the designation of the MCU's universe, considering that the main Marvel universe is Earth 616, which is that which is what the comic books are based in, and then like every other world is like a different one. Like the Ultimate Universe, the original Ultimate Universe was 1610, if I remember correctly. Um, and so on and so forth, and like a few of the other movies and all that stuff are like Earth 1999999, something like that. Anyways, um, and then you also have. I wanted to see the sequel. I wanted to see how Carol Danvers is after what I thought. I wanted to see how Brie Larson really, um, and her character of Captain Marvel were going to do in the sequel to Captain Marvel, which I did watch. And while there were some good things about it, it just felt bland to me. The first Captain Marvel, it was really bland to me. There was some good action, but it was, I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of boring. I did enjoy her trying to, like, finally, like, coming into her powers and all that stuff, but yeah, there's that. And I also wanted to see Monica Rambeau. Like I heard that she was going to be a part of this movie, and we only saw her in um, WandaVision, and we saw how she gained her powers, I believe. And you know, I was looking forward to seeing more of her and her connection, her how her dynamic with Carol Danvers would be uh, going forward, considering that she knew Carol when she was a little girl. And, we don't know if there was any interaction between them. But I remember Stevie Knight, when the movie came out, I saw it. I initially didn't have the money to go see the movie. I was actually going out the DoorDash. And um, what happened was, while whenever I DoorDash, I like put on like like random YouTube videos in order to like kind of give me some background music or background noise, or so I can actually hear something that I might be interested in. And at the time, I was actually following Stevie Knight, and the moment his video came up, popped up on my YouTube, and I was doing some DoorDash, doing some light DoorDash that morning. It was a Saturday morning, the Saturday right after the movie came out. I saw his video where he was just immediately talking about he doesn't want to see the Marvels because it's so woke from the trailers that he saw, and like I didn't even get that far into the video. I think I got maybe 45 seconds into the video when he was just talking about how woke, how woke this movie was. I mean, if I can find the video, I'm gonna like put the clip there. I don't want to find the video, but if I find it, I won't clip it. But basically, it was a big nothing burger of a I don't even want to call it a review or reaction to the trailer, that I was like, you know what? Screw it. And I just, literally just stopped DoorDash. I made just enough to actually buy a ticket to the movie and get myself a drink and a snack. I don't know how that happened, but I was like, I had just made about $30, and I was just like, you know what? Stop in DoorDash, buy myself a ticket. Let's go see this movie. And the funny thing is, like, I had also watched the video from Penguin Zero, Charlie himself, and he was talking about how the movie was just kind of like, meh. Well, he had actual legitimate criticism for the movie, whereas Stevie Knight didn't have any kind of criticism. So I had to go see the movie because Stevie Knight didn't go see the movie. He was just like, I know I don't need to go see this movie. It's too woke. I was just like, is it woke just because it has 3 female leads? Like, explain to me what is the problem with this movie. Anyways, I'm going off topic at this point, but the main focus is Stevie Knight. So Stevie Knight and Abba and Preach, or Abba from Abba and Preach, had a debate a few days ago, if I remember correctly. I think it was Wednesday night. I could be wrong. Tuesday, Wednesday night, one of the two. And they had this debate about Abba and Preach's Charlie Kirk video. That was made shortly after shortly after Charlie Kirk's death and all that stuff. And they were bringing up certain things in that video in certain clips of Charlie Kirk's video. And Stevie Knight actually had a video responding to it, and he also reached out to Abba to talk to him about their video. And so Abba had this I wouldn't even really I don't really think it was actually a debate. It was more like Abba was they got on video. They had video conversation, and they were like, Abba was basically like trying to for the most part, from what I gathered, he was mainly trying to address some of Stevie Knight's concerns about their video on Charlie Kirk. And it got into this weird situation of them like talking about they're talking about school lunches, or not school lunches necessarily, but the subject of child starvation in America, a point that Charlie Kirk was talking about, had debated someone against at a college campus. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because Alba made his usual like Alba and Preach follow up to the quote unquote debate, and Stevie Knight made a response to that video, pretty much trying to call Abba a snake or something like that. When most people who watch Abba and Preach's content know that Abba, if he has like a a debate, or quote unquote debate, or actual one on one discussion with someone, he usually goes back a couple of days later and has like, and pretty much as Watch TV actually brought up, debrief. It has a debrief of what went on in that one-on-one session, just in case nobody caught it, or just in case it was too long. It's basically his version of uh, TLDR. Okay, too long didn't read, or too long didn't watch in this case. So, but he brought up certain points and all that stuff. Now, here's the thing: Stevie Knight, um, he seems like somebody who is, to me, he just seems like somebody who's like a grifting fence sitter, if you know what I mean. Like, I know, for me personally, I would consider myself in the middle when it comes to politics. I think I've said this in a couple of videos. I'm in the middle, but I lean towards the left a little bit. But I can understand both sides of each argument that most people try to portray. It's the reason why I hate politics, okay? Because legitimately, if I happen to agree with a conservative in front of a liberal, all of a sudden now I'm getting called a conservative. Or if I happen to agree with a liberal in front of a conservative, all of a sudden I'm getting called a liberal. But at the same time, I can agree on similar points with each of them. I just happen to think that certain things, I happen to disagree on certain other points. That's how I am. So it's the reason why I don't like talking about politics, and here I am talking about politics. But at the end of the day, like, at the end of the day, like, Stevie Knight, it just seems like he's just trying to make sure that he continues to satisfy his audience. Okay, he's because obviously he's trying to make the money off of YouTube. You know, and there are a few things I have to say about that stuff, but um, about Stevie Knight in general, but I'm not going to get to that right now. I'm just going to focus on the actual content, which is why are we having this discussion? Like, you know what? Best thing I can do is just bring it up, okay? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring it up.
Productive conversation. I mean,
we had,
so yeah, this video,
but we had this whole little thing go on for a good long period of time. So let's
31 minutes long, man. I want somebody to do it, bro. Like, you know, you shitty parents, I get it, dog. It's life. Life is fucking hard, dog. And some children are born in tough circumstances, bro. It is what it is.
Yeah, but I had a debate with Stevie Knight from Night Talk. He reached out to me to have a discussion after he covered our Kurt video a while back. There's like two parts that really like threw me.
14.
All right, so at some point during the actual like debate, it came up across the whole like Charlie Kirk talking point of like the government does not need to provide kids school lunches. Okay, basically, you know, having free lunch at school, and a lot of people will go back and forth with that whole topic and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's to prevent food scarcity. Studies show that like if kids know they have a meal, are well fed, they will learn more. And if they have, if there's a food insecurity going on, if there's a factor of food insecurity going on, kids will not focus on studies or on, you know, school work and all that stuff. And that is kind of true. Like, if you're hungry, you're not going to really focus on anything else. Like, I mean, I know for a fact there are a couple of times where I just happen to skip a couple of meals throughout my day as an adult. And even when I want to try to play a video game, I just don't have the energy. I'm not focused on it. I'm focused on, oh man, what should I eat? or I don't want to really I have a video playing in the background, but I'm not really focused on that video. I'm just like, bro, what should I eat? And the second I eat, guess what? My mind is back on the focus. And there have been a couple of times where I just skip the meal, going straight to work, and then like at work, I'm just like, I have energy at first, and then like I kind of just slow down a little bit because I'm like, dude, and it's even worse when you work in food service sometimes. Like when I was working in food service, it was even worse then because I'm like, dude, when can I take a break so I can like dine on this food, okay? Because I'm hungry. But there's that. Either way, regardless, we get to that whole conversation, and well, let's play the video because that's the only thing I can say about this.
But the smugness with which he said that.
Says in the U.S. around 13 to 14 million children experience food insecurity in recent years, with 1 in 5 children lacking consistent access to enough food. This condition, known as food insecurity, means families don't have reliable access to enough food. The number has seen a significant increase, with 2022 data showing a rise in child food insecurity, reversing previous declines.
I just like to point out that, I mean, I have trouble like reading sometimes. I have to slow it down for myself, but good lord, Stevie, you could have. I see why you didn't want to like look up Google while you're in the middle of a conversation with Abba, because you would have slowed down a little bit and you would have been like trying to focus on that bit. But I digress. Let's continue.
But where in that does it say kids are starving? We can't be switching words out now, man. Food insecurity is entirely different than starving. That was the question posed in that debate with Kirk.
All right, so let me. This is the part I was actually trying to like. I was kind of upset about because I was like, "Are you serious right now, my boy? Are you serious right now? That makes absolutely no. Why are you on that topic of all things?" So let's look at food insecurity and starvation. Because I really want to go into this whole thing. I guess the best thing is, how does food insecurity connect to starvation? How about that on Google? So here we go. Let's look at the Google thing together, shall we? So food insecurity is the limited or uncertain access to adequate food, while starvation is the physical state of prolonged insufficient food intake that can be a severe consequence of chronic food insecurity and hunger. So while the subject of kids in the United States having starving, being very malnourished and all that stuff is completely is like the basically from what food is what this from what this tells me how I interpret it is that if a prolonged set of food insecurity, like you don't know where your next meal is coming from, and eventually you don't have as many nourishing meals over time, it could lead to starvation. Like, this is a severe consequence of chronic food insecurity and hunger. That's what it says. Starvation is the physical state of prolonged insufficient food intake that can be a severe consequence of chronic food insecurity and hunger. Not necessarily that food insecurity leads into it, but it's one a factor into starvation. So if you address the food insecurity problem, if you address the food insecurity problem ahead of time, well, you're going to actually prevent starvation. So, yeah, while we don't have a starvation problem in America, food insecurity can lead to starvation. It could lead to you having unbalanced thing. And I'm also going to add this other thing because while I was watching Watch TV's um, stream, where he basically kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Goodness gracious, reacts to Stevie Knight's video. I also came up with a possibility, like, could starvation lead to could food insecurity lead to childhood well, no, sorry. I was wondering if um childhood food insecurity could lead um I was wondering if childhood food insecurity could lead to um childhood obesity. Because think about it, when you like, if you really think about the whole idea of childhood obesity or obesity in general, it's when kids eat too much and all that stuff, and they get fat off of certain things, and of course, it could lead to an early onset of type 2 diabetes. Correct. And me having type 2 diabetes and also being obese, I hate to say it, but I'm working on it. um, I I feel like that could be a factor because, I mean, I'm not saying that I had food insecurity when I was younger, but I did kind of get to that point as I got older, and especially when I was uh, living at my trailer, the trailer I had for like a few months, especially when I had no roommates to help me out at the time, and I was unsure of where my next meal was going to come from. Yeah, because I was barely keeping it together with the rent and all that stuff. I did not have the money. But anyways, but I also wondered what would happen if a child, if you had food insecurity, could that lead to um, obesity? And I'm looking it up, and we're going to look it up together. And what does it say? Yes, childhood food insecurity can lead to obesity due to factors like psychological stress, increased consumption of calorie dense foods when available, and reliance on cheaper, less nutritious options. This connection, sometimes called the obesity food insecurity paradox, is supported by studies linking food insecure households to higher rates of overweight and obesity in children. And the reason why I bring this up is because, in not only with Charlie Kirk, but in Stevie Knight's situation, they both said something along the lines of, "Oh, we have a child obesity problem. We have a bigger child obesity problem than a child starvation problem." Well, guess what? If we actually focused on um, the problem of food insecurity and making sure that kids have adequate meals in school for for lunch and all that stuff, which don't be don't be knocking on school food. I know it doesn't look like the most quality looking food and all that stuff. I mean, you do have to put into a whole. You have to take into factor that they're making food for who knows how many kids. They don't know how much they're gonna need. So they maybe overcook it and all that stuff, and then save it for a little bit later or something like that. I don't know. I I can only factor that guess in, but at the same time, I remember when I was a kid, and then yeah, while everybody loved pizza days, and when we got that little square, that little rectangular slice of pizza that may or may not have pepperoni on it, but it definitely had cheese and some tomato sauce, tomato paste on it. Even though that was the best of the world, I mean, for goodness sake, everybody knows it was great. We lived for that pizza day. Um, there was still decent food. Like, I did remember having some really good mashed potatoes at school, and some really good chicken. It's really good actual, like, quality. I would say quality food, regardless of what Stevie Knight says in his video, which I will get to that at some point. But anyways, regardless, if you focus on solving the problem of food insecurity, especially with children, it could possibly solve the issue of child obesity. Because at the end of the day, if you, like I said, if you're a kid who's unsure about when his next meal is, then when you get food, you may overeat to, uh, thinking in your head that if you overeat, I shouldn't be hungry later on at all. And then when you actually you find out that you actually have some food at home, like somehow your parent was able to get food, or eventually it becomes a habit of, oh yeah, I have food coming in over and over again, but I still want to eat as much as possible. You start feeling like you're never going to be satisfy your hunger at some point, and of course it leads to you kids becoming more obese and possibly having type 2 diabetes at an early age and all that stuff. You solve the food insecurity problem, you're solving the you're solving a possible potential factor of child starvation, and you're also solving the problem of childhood obesity. Win-win. Win-win. And heck, if we can take care of that problem, if the government can help take care of that problem, we should let that happen. So that whole theory of, oh yeah, kids need, like, we don't need to feed kids in schools, we don't need to give kids free lunches, cut that out. Like, don't say it's on the parents to do it. Just know, because not all parents have all the money in the world. Like, some parents are trying to make sure that there's at least a roof over their kid's head. So let's stop with that whole thing, because I feel like 90% of the time, most of the people who bring up these issues are well off. They don't ever think about the people who are in the who don't make as much as they do. You get what I'm saying? Like, I mean, shoot, I make a decent amount. However, I also don't make enough to. I would say don't make enough to, like, have my own place without a roommate, if that makes any sense. Yeah, and that's the reason why I wanted to, like, save up to buy a house instead of trying to get myself an apartment. I don't want to do the rent thing because that's money coming down in my account over and over again. I mean, I don't mind paying a mortgage if I have to pay a mortgage. I don't mind having to pay the property taxes every once in a while. I can build up to that. But at the same time, if I were to continuously pay rent, it's just like, why? Like, well, I mean, I pay them rent right now, but I'm talking about the rent in some of these apartments. I mean, for goodness sake, $1,100 for rent, and some people take it on the chin and all that stuff. But if you're not making, but even to get certain apartments, if you're not making at least three times the amount of rent, they won't let you get in there because they feel like you're not making enough. Or what if you're gonna be late? You can't be late with that rent. Okay, so I'm just saying. Uh, why can't rent be back to what it used to be, which is $500 a month? Because then you could actually pay for like utilities. Because most of these apartment complexes, they force you to pay for your own utilities, for your own electricity, for your own uh, sometimes your own water, sometimes your own internet and all that stuff. In order for you to do all that, but you also have to pay $1,100 on top of that. Sometimes your electric bill could come up to about $200 just because it's hot. I, I could get into a whole bunch of things, but still, regardless, at the same time, I feel like that's the issue. That's another disconnect that Stevie Knight has. He's not really focusing on, well, I make enough money. Y'all should get a job or get good at YouTube in order for you to make as much money as I make. Yeah, no, that's not how it goes. You gotta also, if you're going to factor in, if you're gonna factor affordability, you need to factor in the lowest denominator, the lowest common denominator, besides homeless people, of course. Figure out what's the lowest amount that people make, and then adjust your ideas of what it would cost, how things cost to that mindset, and then you can figure out. Oh shoot! Most people don't like. They're not. It's not that they're bad parents. It's that they're struggling to pay all these different bills. They're struggling to keep a roof over their heads. They're struggling to. They're pretty much just barely treading water at this point. There you go. Like not everybody has these like this great this great amount of money coming in. Like not all people like for some reason there's always a thing that everybody makes at least about, I'd say, people focus on the average of most people making about the average American making about 60,000 a year, I think. Average. Let's see. Average take home. Pay in the U.S. Yeah. So the average annual pay for an after tax as of September 21st, 2024, 2025, I'm sorry. Actually, let me bring that up on screen. So, yeah, we got as of September 21st, 2025, the average annual pay for an after tax in the United States is $58,389 a year. So, just in case you need a simple salary calculator, that works out to be you'd have to make at least $28.07 an hour. Okay? At least $28 an hour to make the average amount that everybody, that the United States makes in a year, right? Now, if we're only focusing on the average, that means we're pulling in numbers from like uh, the CEOs of a whole bunch of different businesses like Disney and all that stuff who take home like what 3 billion, and we're also averaging the lowest amount somebody actually makes in the U.S. And once you take into and because I need y'all to like really focus on the math skills because we learned this in math. I remember learning this specifically, and I want to averages. I would say we learned that in sixth or seventh grade. I would hazard a guess it was seventh grade because my favorite math teacher, Frank Russo. Yeah, I'm naming names. Okay, my favorite math teacher, Frank Russo, got me inspired to like really pay attention in math. Okay, I'm just saying. But averages, averages is when you take all the different every single number uh, added together and then divided by how many people that you actually are taking from it. And there you go. $58,389 a year. So you would say that's the average, right? Well, let me do my own little research and I'll be right back. So if you were to focus on the averages, right? I make approximately I I'm not trying to actually give you a legitimate number. I'm just going to like bring out, but I make about 30,000. I make about $20,000 less than that, or about $25,000 less than that average. Okay, and this is what, and that average is what most apartment complexes would expect you to be making in order for them to like even allow you an opportunity to get an apartment at those complexes. Even the least amount of the ones that have the smallest rent, the cheapest rent. There we go. They're basing their number for rent off of that. Crazy, right? Because like you'd have because let's look at the numbers. Like I remember, like some of these apartments are like usually 1,000, uh, $1,100 a month, right? Look at that, $1,100 a week. That's how much you would need to be making. $1,100 a week, and then what? Four? That's about four times. So they want you to make just one payment under that a month. 1 week of a payment under that a month in order for you to even be qualified to possibly get a rental at any of these apartments. And I have a really good job. And I make 40 hours a week. And I still don't come up to that. And think about most of the people who are working in retail. Think about most of the people who are working in fast food restaurants or restaurants in general. They'd have to be making at least $4,865 a month. The only way I could think of getting that kind of hourly wage is if I were to work at like, I don't know. I'd have to work in a really good cubicle at this point. I'd have to have the suit and tie and go and do that, or I'd have to work in like more construction jobs and all that stuff. But think about it like this: the more you keep trying to move everybody over into construction jobs, the more you're possibly going to have a lot of people who might not cut it at construction or might not cut it in all these other different fields, and therefore, and most of these fields have their higher risk at you dying, especially in construction jobs. There's higher possibility of you getting fired because the company like goes under, or certain other things happen. I'm not going to bring up government stuff, but you know what I'm talking about. Like y'all don't factor into that. You factor into how much you can make on YouTube, and not everybody's going to make a killing on YouTube. But once again, I just went on a whole huge tangent about this. Let's get back to the actual video at hand. I just completely like knocked um, Stevie Knight's whole little what he's about to say out of the park with that whole bit of um, the food insecurity leading into starvation, or the food insecurity also leading into obesity, and how solving for the childhood food scarcity issue actually prevents and can um, help stop the idea of either child starvation or child obesity. So that's what good research is. Like really think that's critical thinking at its best. But let's go ahead and listen to what this fool has to say.
And even with addressing this topic, I mean, I hadn't seen where he's going with it, bro. But this video was one of the videos Alba cherry picked to manufacture and narrative about Kurt trying to highlight him as disgusting.
Now, him saying cherry picked is wild. Even Watch TV actually brought this up. It's wild for him to talk about cherry picking when at the end of the day, he's going to be cherry picking throughout this entire video. Like, if you actually pay attention. But I wouldn't call what Alba did was cherry picking. I would call what Alba did was just bringing up the more viral clips, so to speak, of Charlie Kirk, because of the fact that, well, Charlie Kirk did say a lot of things that was very divisive with a lot of people. And by bringing up those particular clips, which I wasn't a person who actually followed everything that Charlie Kirk said, but I did see some of these clips in general, and therefore all he did was bring up the same viral clips that have been going across the internet for years at this point. So I wouldn't consider that cherry picking. If he was actually cherry picking, I would say he would talk about, like, he would literally bring up the points of, I would say Abba and Preach would have brought up the points of when he said something completely stupid without any kind of context in it, or without it showing that he was answering a question or answering somebody's question and all that stuff. Which is another thing that this fool is going to do. He's going to take certain things out of context and say that he's also being taken out of context, or Charlie Kirk is being taken out of context, when in actuality, that's not what's going on. You got an idea, you know why he is saying what he's saying, because he's being asked that question, or he's on his own platform talking about things. You don't, when somebody's taking you out of context, they're going to say something at first and be like, this person, I feel like this person is, I feel like this person might be I'm not talking about him, but let me just go here. One TV brought this kind of thing up, but saying somebody is like a PDF file, and then finding a clip of a video where that same person who he's having issues with, who he's claiming is a PDF file, just happens to say, "I love children." That's taking somebody out of context, because that clip could actually mean that one little clip of him saying "I love kids" could actually be him saying, responding to somebody going like, "Oh yeah, I just had a baby." And he'd be like, "Oh, that's so good. I'm so happy for you. I love kids. I wish I had my own at this point, blah, 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 blah." Like, you see how I could be taken out of context with that one? But the way that, like, this man is going to talk about, like, people taking him out of context, or taking Charlie Kirk out of context, is ridiculous. It's like how somebody else said in Watts's comments, they look at the way they say somebody's being taken out of context is based on them saying, "Hey, you're making this man look bad. You're making me look bad." It's stupid, really.
So like moving the goalposts and discussing different topics. Hopefully he doesn't.
And okay, back to what I was saying. Back to what this was about. Moving the goalposts is wild. Like let's go back to what he was saying.
Posed in that debate with Kirk, and even with addressing this topic, I mean, I haven't seen where he's going with it, bro. But this video was one of the videos Alba cherry picked to manufacture a narrative about Kirk trying to highlight him as disgusting. So like we're moving the goalposts and discussing a different topic. Hopefully he doesn't take. You know what? I'm gonna wait before I get ahead of what's going on here, man, because he may address it.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you happen to see this video and you are a budding content creator and YouTuber, and you want to react to something, I would say, let the video play for a good minute, and then react to it. See, me, I'm pausing it multiple times because I've already seen this video. I've seen some of the major points of this video, and therefore I've already established what I want to say about this particular video for my video. So of course I'm gonna keep pausing and stopping and talking about how I consider him a dumbass because of the fact that I've seen it so many times that I know why he's a dumbass. And I've already kind of looked up some of the things this dumbass did not want to look up. Like, goodness gracious, I can't stand this motherfucker. But let's continue. Let's fucking go, okay?
But yeah, it says food insecurity, bro. It doesn't say people starving.
Yeah, and as we addressed earlier, it does say food. It says food insecurity, not people starving. But food insecurity does lead into, can be a factor into starvation. Is a factor of starvation. Starvation. Starvation is one outcome of what food insecurity can cause, as well as obesity. Solve one problem, you solve two other problems. Solve the base problem, and you can completely wipe out the other two problems. Potentially.
Let me ask ChatGPT and see how many people are actually starving.
And here's the funny thing, like during their debate, I don't like using ChatGPT for any reason, right? Well, I don't like using ChatGPT overall, but I have been starting to slowly use it for certain things that I might be stumped on and all that stuff. And I have it up here right now. On the day of the debate between Stevie Knight and ABBA, he asked the question, which one is higher? I went verbatim. Which one is higher? The amount of abortions in America or the amount of starving children in America? And this is what I got. It depends somewhat on how you define starving children. Depends on how you define, i.e. severe hunger or food insecurity. But by any reasonable estimate, the number of children in the U.S. who face hunger or food insecurity is much higher than the number of abortions. Here are some relevant numbers. In 2024, there were about 1,038,100 clinician I always have a hard time saying words, provided abortions in U.S. states without total bans, right? In recent years, the U.S. has typically had on the order of 600,000 to 900,000 abortions annually. Meanwhile, nearly 14 million children in the U.S. live in food insecure homes, meaning they lack reliable access to nutritious foods. Some data shows that in 2023, about 7.2 million children lived in food insecure households, where children, along with adults, were food insecure, meaning they didn't know when their next meal was coming. They got the roof over their head, they got electricity, so they could actually have, like, I don't know, central air and heating, especially in the cold months. Heating necessary. Even using the more conservative measure, 7 plus million, the count of children experiencing hunger is many times greater than the count of abortions in a given year. Now, if you were to hyper focus on legitimate severe hunger or starvation, yeah, then the numbers kind of switch out. But if you are a smart person and are trying to address the actual legitimate problem that could lead to starvation, the legitimate problem is food insecurity. And if we're talking about food insecurity, which would lead to starvation, there's more food insecurity going on than abortions. So it's a bigger problem. Food insecurity is a bigger problem over abortions. And that's how ChatGPT told me. And I went verbatim of how he actually asked the question to Abba in their debate, right? This man, in order to hyper focus on starving, because that's where he wants to lead, because he's the one shifting the goalpost in this particular video. He's going to want to get you to focus. He's going to want ChatGPT, I'm sorry, to hyper focus on actual malnourished kids in America.
I don't even need to look up the stat. I know. Now I'm 99.9% sure.
And if you're hyper focused on being disingenuous and hyper focusing on starvation instead of the actual problem that needs to be addressed in order to prevent starvation and all that stuff, yeah, of course you're going to be right, because there's not that many starving children in America.
Is there?
Because the starvation problem in America is food insecurity. If we can knock out food insecurity, we can knock out potential of starvation. And then if we knocked out food insecurity, then of course abortion would be a lot worse, and we got to figure out how to focus on that too. But still, without necessarily just immediately getting rid of abortions. Okay, I get that people are pro-life, I'm pro-choice. However, the point of the matter is, I do want kids. I'm not going to want to abort any kid that I have. I am going to go through the woman, because the girl that I end up potentially knocking up or having children with, I would hope that they would want to have kids as well. And if they don't, then, I don't know why we're in a relationship if we are in a relationship at that point. Just saying.
A child. No, I ain't gonna leave open like that. How many children are starving? I'm trying to be objective. I don't got a leading question into my bias. How many children are suffering
Like, you see that point? It's not that he's trying to like be objective or anything like that. He's trying to make it so that he's trying to figure out a way to word it so that he can hyper focus on starvation over food insecurity, so that he can get the answer that he wants.
Starving. And, so, short answer, about 13 to 14 million children in Europe.
Let's look at this. If I can actually read it, hold on. Even when I build it up, it's not nearly as. I gotta. Let's try to turn out to 1080p. And it still looks blurry as heck. On high definition. What the hell? That's messed up. Anyways.
Just live in.
Yeah, maybe I still had that same problem.
Insecure household in 2023. What the fuck does food insecure mean? A bit.
You just learned what food insecure means. And yet you're sitting there like, what the heck does food insecure mean? And they're actually explaining it on the freaking page from what I could gather. Still can't see most of it because it's blurry as heck.
More detail on what those words mean. Most official counts use the term.
We're living in idiocracy. But I don't want to stay on this whole video too long because he might be one of those types who goes, "Oh, I need a copyright strike on this fool here because he only has 400 subscribers." Because he's hyper focused on subscribers too. So let's continue on.
School with niggas like that. Y'all didn't go to school with nobody who just sometimes they would show up and they didn't have a lunch, and the teacher would sometimes have to fill in. And they would. But I remember some
I gotta
teachers.
say this again, bro. You clearly saw me state that there is no starvation problem in. We could have talked about all this shit, the context, what you did with Kurt, in conversation, bro. Live. So what are we talking about? It's the comparison between abortions and food insecurity. It's a stupid argument, dog, because regardless of these children's circumstances, they still have the ability to live. So what are we talking about?
Yeah, they still have the ability to live, and I get where you're trying to come at with when it comes to like, whereas food insecurity is about the living kids that are going on and they're not having legitimate food scarcity. You're talking about all these different abortions where people are ending the potential life of a kid before it starts, before it's birthed. And I get that whole argument because I do have an issue. I do slightly have an issue with abortions. However, again, as I stated, I'm more pro-choice because of the fact that I do believe it should be the woman's decision. Hopefully, they will, talk with their significant other if they have a significant other, and hopefully, it's not just so they can. Try to erase an affair, the consequence of an affair or something like that. But at the same time, abortions are meant for, if two people know they should not bring a baby into this world, because one, they probably don't know if they would be able to care for it. I'd say let them have their abortions. Let them have an abortion, because if they are not able to care for it, you're bringing life onto this world just for it to suffer, and I feel like that's even worse. Like, I don't know if anybody actually noticed that bit, and potentially pass on before they even had a chance to actually like, experience life or even say a word. I don't like that either. Um, and also let's talk about another elephant in the room. People, I know, just a year or so prior to them, uh, or a few months prior to the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, I remember there was a video that came out. Some girl was rapping, made a rap song about mainly getting abortions all the time, and the way it was, the way those lyrics went, I get that they were just trying to make the way those lyrics went. Let's just say, I mean, I somewhat understand why Roe v. Wade got overturned, especially if any of those Supreme Court justices actually, especially the conservative ones, happen to uh, run across that particular video. That would piss off a lot of people, a lot of conservatives, and you gotta also look into that consequences of actions. And that girl did not help out the did not help the case for Roe v. Wade. I'm just saying. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. But let's continue with this fool because I need to get some sleep, and I don't want to see this man's face on my screen for too much longer.
What are we talking about? Why?
You know what? Actually, I'm just going. That's where I'm going to end the video because I already got to edit this down a little bit, and I don't want to like use up all of his video. I got to half of his video. I just want to really talk about the food insecurity issue and the abortion issue. But I'm if you like this video, I may come back and like finish out where he goes into this whole trying to prove what it means to take somebody out of context or what it means to like hold on to context. But either way, throughout this, if you didn't see this debate between Abba and Preach, I highly recommend you check it out. But at the end of the day, it is holy. It just shows how dumb, how stupid Stevie Knight is. Stevie Knight really is. Because if you can't, I mean, like in actual real debates, you have to already have research your topic, and you have to already have come up with like legitimate questions to ask your opponent in order to legitimate questions or legitimate ways to get your opponent to change their mind. In this particular state of debates, or this arc of debates that we have online and all that stuff, you have the it's more at this point it's more about like just gaining points and hopefully getting the audience to say, oh yeah, you won, they lost, or whatnot. At the end of the day, a debate is really just to get people to change their minds. And if you can't change their minds, then nobody really won a debate in that situation. Now it's just about style points or oral points and all that stuff. And especially when it's a quote unquote debate on over a video chat, you have the ability to research in real time the talking points of your opponent and your own talking points to make sure that you yourself can have knowledge and you're not looking like a dumbass throughout the entire fucking shit. And that's what Stevie Knight did throughout the entire goddamn debate. Oh, good lord! All he did was make he anytime Abba tried to tell him to Google something. All he said was, "I'm not gonna Google it, man. I'm not gonna Google it." And he was just like sitting there, like he was not really caring about it because he already knew that he was cooked at that point. And then now he's coming back and trying to um, change up the things because at the end of the day, he doesn't know what he was talking about. He has no fucking he has no ability to critically think about anything or actually do legitimate research on whatever topic that he wants to talk about. Me personally, I stay my ass out of certain things unless I actually have adequate knowledge on the subject. Because I don't want to be looking like a fool. And at the end of the day, if somebody is able to change my mind after I've already gained enough knowledge on my stance and on their stance, guess what? I will take the L. I will sit there and be like, you know what? You actually have a decent ass point. But, goodness gracious. Learn to critically think, people. But that's me, and that's all I got to say about this shit. You know, I I will say one thing. I did try to make a Charlie Kirk video. I posted it. It wasn't me celebrating. It was me actually feeling horrible about the man's death. Because in all honesty, I feel like the best way to change the world is through speech. That's how I always felt like. In order to change the moment you change somebody's opinion is the moment that you really change the world, for better or for worse. And when you end the life, when you silence a voice in that way, you're not doing anything to help the situation. You're actually making the situation worse. So, let me just sit there and say this right now. While I wasn't a big fan of Charlie Kirk, I'm going to say this as a person in the middle. I wasn't a fan of Charlie Kirk, but I still don't think he should have passed. I still don't think that he should have been murdered the way he was. And God bless Charlie Kirk's wife for actually having the resilience, the grace to actually forgive her husband's murderer. But I still think he does need to be punished, and I'm sure she believes so as well. So let the man who murdered Charlie Kirk be punished. Let's not talk about this. Let's not try to put him in a group of left or right and all that stuff. This was a young man who ended someone else's life, and I feel like that's always the worst thing. And I'm not going to look at it as I'm not going to look at him as the face for all whatever side. That's how we shouldn't do these things. We should always be able to talk to each other. We should always be able to find a way to change each other's minds through speech, because that's what we have as humans. We were given the ability to legitimately have a language and also be able to learn other languages in order to have dialogues with each other in this way. So let's stop doing the left versus right thing, because in all honesty, that's not helping us. It's just making us worse, in my honest opinion. But that's all I gotta say. You guys have a great day, a great week, a great month, and a great rest of the year, if you can. Alright? Let's get through 2025 together, hopefully with no more tragic deaths. Okay? I'll see y'all later. Peace.